You are listening to the Beyond the High Road podcast with Shelby Milford, episode number 125. Stay tuned. Welcome to Beyond the High Road, a podcast dedicated to healing your heart and life following the grief of alienation. I'm your host, Shelby Milford, a twice certified life coach specializing in post-traumatic growth. If you're experiencing the effects of alienation and you're ready to heal, then this show is my love letter to you. Stay tuned. Hey, y'all. I am coming in hot today in more than one sense of the word. I just got done with a workout, so I'm actually literally hot. And then also, I have a topic that I planned to do last week, but last week didn't work out, if you heard that one. I moved it to this week, and this week, now it applies so much more than it did last week. So I've got more of a personal stake behind this one. Well, I always do, but you know what I'm saying? It's more true for me right now. Let's get into it. All right. So we're talking today, if you didn't read the title of this, about your powerful yes. Having, possessing, using, feeling powerful for all the things that you want to say yes to in life, and saying no to the things that maybe you really truly want to say no to, but never do, never have the guts and the courage to say no. I mean, these days, in the last, 10, 15 years or so, it's so much more common to hear about people learning how to say no in their lives, saying no, setting boundaries, drawing limits for other people or limits for yourself. There's a lot of no talk in the world, right? With regard to self-respect. And we also, as alienated parents, you might feel like you're hearing no a lot, right? Or you are having to say no a lot. Or maybe even you feel like you're the bad cop parent and you're having to say no in that way. That's why today I want to focus on the yes, possessing a powerful yes, feeling empowered when you want to say yes. It's really just about self-advocacy and true connection, right? Fostering true connection between you and whoever you're in relationship with. And that even could mean just yourself. Do you ever find yourself agreeing to do things that you really don't want to do? Like you'll say yes, even though in your heart of hearts you want to say no. Like the word yes is a reflex for you. As alienated parents, we often find ourselves stuck between a rock and a hard place. That's how we feel anyway, right? Thinking that we have no choices. Many of us have been on the defensive for so long that we've learned how to make do with unacceptable amounts of resources, with unacceptable amount of time spent, care spent, thought put into what we want, and then nurturing those things, right? If you're like me, where you feel most comfortable doing things for yourself, then oftentimes what happens is because we're so focused on other people and wanting to please them and also wanting to do everything for ourselves, like not wanting to rely on anybody else for help. The us part of things ends up getting very rushed and not as well thought out because we're spending so much time appeasing the outside, the other people, right? For a few reasons, which I'm going to outline in just a minute. But we end up leaving scraps for ourselves. We don't have the time. We end up getting, worn out, drained by doing for other people. We don't realize at the time that we're doing that, though, because we feel like in our minds we're doing this because we love them, because they're so important to us, or because they asked and we don't want to say no, right? That kind of thing. But you end up doing, and I do it too, them a disservice and you a disservice. So not only are we getting the bare minimum, giving ourselves the bare minimum in our own life with our own goals and aspirations and day-to-day like upkeep for ourselves, like that bare minimum self-care, we also then are giving of ourselves in all the areas in a disingenuous way, I guess. And so then it causes all of this stress and upheaval on the inside. And also coming from something like alienation, and maybe you are trying to rebuild your life again, but you're so busy on the outside wanting to help with everybody else because in the moment when you said yes, you thought it was like realistic or it seemed like the right thing to do, or maybe you were feeling like less worthy. But now you're doing all the things for them, and then you end up saying stuff because you allocated all your time and energy to these other people, saving no time for you. So the reasons we say yes to everyone else, but not to ourselves, I'm sure you've heard them before, and probably from me too, is people pleasing is number one. That we want them to accept us, to think that we're nice and good and wonderful people. People pleasing is actually always self-centered, even though right in the words, it sounds like we're doing all the things for others, but it's selfish because we want them to think of us in a specific way. We want them to not think bad about us. And so we people please instead, but it comes off so noble, like I just want them to be happy and I just want them blah, blah, blah. But really underneath it all is, many times anyway, I can't say always, but is a lack of self-worth and a lack of integrity. So another reason that we say yes when we don't really want to, when we mean no, is because we feel pressured or obligated, right? Because we've already said yes before. I can think of a lot of times where this has been true for me, where I've already said yes and done something with or for some person before. And so I feel like now that I've already said yes and we've done that very thing before, like back when I did go out drinking with my friends, when I stopped and they would ask me to go to happy hour, I felt bad. And many times I did end up going anyway, though I didn't want to drink because I knew that it wasn't where I wanted to go with myself. Like that's not where I wanted to spend my time. I didn't like my relationship with alcohol, but because they asked and I didn't want to spend the energy to have the conversation with them, I just wanted them to be happy with me. And I felt obligated because that's how we always did it. That was the tone of our relationship. I ended up catering to what they wanted in the moment, like their instant gratification, which is on them. That's fine. They can go do what they want to do, but I don't have to join in to my own detriment, right? So that's one way that we do it, but we can also do it now. This is like a little bit more, much more personal. I did this with sex. It's because maybe I said yes to it once before with somebody that I wasn't in a relationship with. And then I felt like obligated to say yes again because we'd already done it. Anyway, that was definitely for me a self-worth thing. Got me in places I didn't really want to be in many times in my past. And I think all of it contributes to how we landed with the person that would alienate our children from us, you know? So it's always helpful to recognize where it is that you stopped listening to yourself in order to cater to somebody else's needs. Now, it doesn't have to be in a way that then you start resenting them, just getting curious about like, where is it that I have chosen somebody else over me? And do I want to continue doing that? We're going to get into that in a minute, though. Another reason we say yes when we really want to say no is because we want to avoid conflict. I don't know anybody that is being alienated from their kid that hasn't done this. We want to be able to see our kids. We think, and they are most of the time using our kids as collateral so that we will do the things that they want so they feel in control, right? So we decide to play their game and we say yes. We say yes to all the things, or maybe some of the things. And it gets us into trouble in the end. But in the meantime, like on the forefront, sometimes it'll save you. So you're like, I don't want to feel the pain now, so maybe I'll just wait till the end and it won't be as bad, but it usually is twice as bad. But the fact that we want to avoid conflict is something that you can really look at, because what about the conflict don't you like? What about it makes it uncomfortable for you? And what about their actions need to mean conflict for you? They can get upset, but it doesn't mean that there is conflict, because conflict would mean that two people are resisting. But if you're not resisting and you're saying an emphatic yes because you want to do that, that's one thing. But if you're saying yes when you mean no, you'll create extra friction, and that will actually cause conflict. We say yes when we mean no, or say yes without thinking about it because we fear rejection. Again, we've all done it, I think. We worry about the consequences of no, similar to avoiding conflict. We worry about the punishment that we'll get as a result of standing up for what we know to be true for us at our own cost. And another reason that we say yes when we really mean no is you just have a habit of overcommitting. Say yes before you actually think about everything that's entailed with that yes. The habit of overcommitting, like if you on autopilot say yes to things, to whatever the things are, and those things can either be with yourself or they can be with any sort of relationship, work, romantic, friendships, familial, whatever. If you're saying yes before you're able to even use your prefrontal to think, then that indicates that you're getting a reward from it. That's the only reason it would be a habit, is because somehow your body has assessed all that happens when you do say yes, and it likes the result. For instance, for about 6 months there, just ended maybe 3 weeks ago, I every night was eating at least a half a pint of ice cream, salted caramel truffle gelato, actually, every night, without fail, for 6 months. It may have been longer. Now, guys, I don't really love ice cream, but every so often I go on these ice cream kicks. This one happened to last for a really long time. So what I started to notice when I was already ready to drop the habit, let it go, I would go to the store, and in the back of my mind, I'd be like, you should get ice cream tonight. No, we said we're going to stop. And at some point in there, I started entertaining more the habit brain's dialogue than I did my prefrontal cortex. And we know that with habit, when you're already entered into the reward little triangle, it numbs your prefrontal. I went from reasoning thinking straight to crazy habit thinking, need ice cream, must have ice cream now, straight into autopilot every time I went to the store. I had already pre-decided weeks before, we're not doing ice cream every night anymore at all, really, right now. I wanted to let go of that because we all know why. Anyway, we can do this with all the things. Notice if you do have a habit that you're trying to get rid of, notice when you start dumbing yourself down and turning off all reasoning. I can almost feel the click over to autopilot. It's crazy. So anyway, we can overcommit that way, have a habit of doing it. Then we can also do it with other people. And this gets us into trouble too. If you're a chronic people pleaser and you just say yes to all the people, then you probably are walking around pretty resentful, low-key resentful at the world, right? Because you feel like you do everything for everybody, and then you're left with nothing. You have no time, no energy, no resources, no money, no whatever it is, because you couldn't make the money because you're too busy helping somebody else or doing something else or whatever. I know that this is speaking to a lot of you guys right now. Coming from trauma, this is what we do. When we are feeling bad about our lives or about whatever's happened, we want to buffer away our emotions and not sit with that discomfort. I've talked about this probably every time that we have an episode, is that we want to get out of the discomfort and the agony, the grief of being without our children. It's easy to start saying yes and getting caught up in other things, other people's lives. And sometimes even what that is getting caught up with the case too, right? Like if you're still in active litigation for your kiddo, right? Getting so caught up in the case that you end up overdoing, overthinking, over communicating, calling all the people and doing all this busy work that never adds up to anything. It was time wasted, really, because you weren't well thought out. Instead, you were just saying, yes, I just need to keep doing. I need to keep doing. I need to keep doing. Because that will create the end result of getting your kid back. We think in our minds that if we just keep saying yes, doing more tasks will result better than doing less tasks. But really, we're fearful of sitting with the emotion. We don't want to sit still. So we just keep busy. And what that ends up doing, y'all, if you haven't already figured that out, is you tire yourself out completely and you're never really working smart. You're just working hard. You're putting yourself to work like a dog. I don't think any of our dogs work these days, but you know what I'm saying. You're putting in all this blood, sweat, and tears, and it's not efficient, as effective. It's coming from chaotic thinking. When it comes down to it, when we're talking about other people, we say yes to outside things because we're scared to say yes in our own lives, right? We're scared to sit with any discomfort we have going on, and then once processing, really looking at the whole picture, allowing for the discomfort, assessing and deciding what we want to say yes to, you'll end up feeling less chaotic on the inside and also becoming more productive. But we say yes to others instead because it feels useful. It feels like, okay, well, at least we're doing something, because that sense of urgency won't go away ever since our kids have been gone. It took a long time for that to go away for me. I had that back when I still had her all the time. In fact, most of the time, like she would go to her dad's for the night and that sense of urgency would just be swirling in my belly the whole time she was gone. Like that I needed to be doing something. Like I didn't know what to do with myself when she wasn't there. And so I felt this anxiety. And then once she went over to her dad's and she was gone, it really kicked in and it was on high gear for a long time. But I let it go on for longer. I perpetuated that, I guess, because I was trying to verb it away. Do. Say yes to everything outside. Say yes to busying myself with the case. And that sense of urgency set in even more because my work wasn't working. You know? Funny, not funny at all. It was terrible. It was miserable. Also, saying yes to myself felt selfish, even delusional. This one hits home for me a lot still to this day. I still find myself questioning or curbing my desires for myself, especially like when I'm around other people, mostly my family, like my mother or father. I will find myself editing what comes out of my mouth when I'm talking to either one of them about what I want to do with myself or like any goal that I have. It's almost like I need to let them know that I understand that this goal probably won't come to fruition, that I won't be able to make it happen, but at least I'm giving it a shot. Like in my mind, the way that I present it to them is that, look, I already know you don't have to tell me. I know probably I won't be able to achieve this, but I'm thinking about going after it, which is so disempowering. I know why it's there. I mean, I feel sad for myself when I'm saying this out loud. And I know that a lot of you guys probably feel this too, depending on what your family life was like growing up. And I'm not saying I had a horrible family life. And I think I've expressed this to you guys before. I had a fine, it was okay. But I also had a lot of heartbreak too. Like I think every single one of us have in our own ways, you know? But this lack of self-worth and knowing that I could achieve something, I never got that, you know, from my parents. And I know they didn't mean to do that, but they did. Anyway, so putting it out there to them that I'm aware that they don't think that I can, and that I should take that into consideration before wasting my time on my own life, my own damn life. It seems in the moment when I've done it, it seems like self-protective, I guess, or like I just need them to know, like, I know what you're thinking. I need to tell them that I'm aware of it before I continue my sentence, which ends up putting a cap on me, keeps me feeling confined, like that those things that I want aren't possible. And I know and I believe otherwise. But it's so funny how when we're around like the longest relationships that we've held in our lives, for me, it's my parents. So funny how we revert back to childhood, you know? Anyway, so how can you say yes, own your yes with no apology, and like even recognize your yes? How do you move from the fear of failure or any of the things like people pleasing or obligation that I talked about just a little bit ago and move into an empowered place of advocacy for yourself? The answer most of the time, y'all, is just to decide. It's just decide that this is my time. This is my year. We're still early in 2025. Make 2025 or whatever year that you're listening to this, your year. I don't care if it's December. Make this your new beginning. This year, no matter what else is going on, no matter what's going on, like with your kids, with the court case, or with your job or your relationship or whatever else, all the chaos can be going on all the places. And you don't have to be the one that's putting out all the fires. You don't have to busy yourself out all the places, at least not before you tend to you. So instead, decide that you are going to consider yourself first, that you are going to start making decisions based on self-respect, love, and admiration for you and also for the others in your life. Because when you say yes to you, that also does others a service, a great service. By saying yes to you, when you do say yes to them, it makes your action and your decision that much sweeter, that much more valued and valuable, because you mean it. Have you ever been on the receiving end of a weak yes? And by weak yes, I mean everything I was talking about when we do it, right? When you are on the receiving end of that yes, how does it feel for you? Can you recall a time when somebody said yes haphazardly, or like said yes before they really thought about what's entailed with their commitment because they felt obligated? Think about like when your kids have said yes to you because they just thought that they had to, like not emphatically. Like, okay. Have you ever asked them to take a picture with you and they're like, you know, how does that feel for you when, oh, okay. It's terrible, right? A lot of us, though, because we're adults, we may not about it, but that's on the inside. We just don't show that to them. So on top of not really wanting to and being on the inside, which does oftentimes show through, we also add this other layer of this disingenuine, like, sure, which is crazy. What it does is when somebody says yes to us and they mean no, or the opposite, we're doing it, we cut off the opportunity for connection. Because the second that we do something that's against what we really want, we stop the energy, the vulnerability, the exchange. A wall goes up and it's all very one-sided. It doesn't seem one-sided because in the moment I'm doing this for them. But if you don't actually want to be doing it, or you're doing it because of all those things, there's now a force field around you and you're doing it for protection. And the same for them. I deal with this also in like my consults. For me, and you can apply this to whatever is going on in your life. But for me, I really want the people that I work with, especially because most of them are coming to me for a 6-month period, some for 3 months, some for 6 months, but even 3 months is a considerable amount of time to be working with somebody, partnering with somebody, and doing what I do, right? In this coaching relationship, we're talking about very intimate, vulnerable things most of the time. Right? Even in my business coaching clients, I want them to say yes and agree to this commitment to themselves emphatically. I don't want them to say yes because they think they have to, or because somebody else told them to, or because they're trying to people please me because they're trying to take care of me. I can take care of myself. I don't want anybody saying yes when they don't mean yes. You know what I'm saying? I want them to know what they're signing up for. It is a commitment. And I'm just bringing this up because I think that this might help for you in your own life too. Like, what are you signing yourself up for? And are you looking at all that it entails? And are you good with all that? Is it worth it for you? That's what I tell my potential clients, like after each consult I have with them, I say, listen, you have 3 days and I'm giving you this 3 days because I want you to not sit on the fence. It's not necessarily all, of course, there's some sales in it. My biggest reason is because teetering in a maybe, allowing that to sit and fester takes up energy in your mind and in your body. And then it has you non-committal to where you're going with your life. But if you decide that your no is a no to me, I'm not hurt. In fact, thank you. I really, truly ask for you guys to do it. Again, use this for your own within 72 hours so that it's not lingering. Let your yes be your yes and a no be a no, and move forward. Sometimes it's like, no, not now. I will revisit this in 3 months with whatever it is that you have going on. Let's say for you, it's like a self-commitment thing where like you've got work right now and you've still got your kids, some semi-part-time, or you have maybe stepchildren, whatever. There's a lot going on right now, but you also really want to write this book. It's really important to either decide, yes, I'm going to do it and I'm going to allocate this amount of time for myself because this is the pain right now and the extra effort put out will be worth it when I'm done. I'm just going to keep following through and I'm making that decision mindfully, intentionally. That's amazing, right? But also equally amazing is to have the courage to say, I'm not ready to do this right now. I have all of this on my plate. I'm going to say no, and I'm going to revisit this in 3 months. And in 3 months' time, I will decide again. But for now, it's a no, as opposed to, I don't know, it's really what I want to be doing, but I'm not doing it. You'll end up punishing yourself by saying, well, you didn't get that done. Why do you keep not getting that done? And you'll make it a limitation on you. I just can't get it done. But you really never made the decision whether to do it or not do it. Does that make sense? So it's really helpful to, like, if you're going to say yes to something, then bring it on, like onboard it and have that planned into each and every one of your, like, include that in your rule sets for your days, for your weeks, what have you. But when you have it on maybe your commitment level to it, if you try to do it, it's just not going to be as successful. You're going to find it a lot more friction along the way, I guess is what I'm saying. All right. So whether you're committing to yourself, right, or you're committing to somebody else, I know for me, when I'm doing that or when I'm on the receiving end of it, I feel much better about the exchange, like with the coaching, back to my consults, right? I feel much better about the exchange when the person on the other end has thought it through and is saying yes, knows their reasons why they're saying yes, and they like their reasons for doing so. Or they know their reasons for saying no, and they also like those reasons for saying no. They're not going to beat themselves up about the no moving forward. That's the last thing I ever want from any of you. It's okay either way for me, because I want you to be in or I want you to be out, but being on the fence there, you'll torture yourself. It's wasted energy. So for a powerful yes, there are questions that you can ask. You can ask the other person if this is something that you're committing to outside of you, or questions that you can ask for yourself. I really do encourage with things that you're taking on, commitments with other people, to other people, that you ask the questions, have the courage to ask them. Such a better start to the relationship. And maybe you've been in the relationship for a long time. It's a friend of yours or whatever it is, but this is a new relationship that you'd start with this new commitment that you'd be making to them. Do you know what I'm saying? All right. So the questions that you can ask before you say yes or no is, how much time will this involve overall? What's the deadline or end date of the commitment? You can ask that to yourself, obviously, too. If you're asking somebody else, what is your desired outcome and what is my role in that? How am I going to play a part in this in your mind? What is it that you see for me? It's your vision, however you want to say that. And of course, same thing. If it is for you, then you want to really picture what your role is, or roles, like all the hats you will wear in creating or attaining that goal. All right. So I talked about how much time will it be overall, but also how many hours will you be spending? What are you, if it's somebody else, what is my daily, weekly, monthly, whatever time that you would like me to allot to this, right? Not that you need to follow that, but just get an idea from their side what they've really envisioned for you. Talking about this on the upfront, you guys, and I'm not done with the questions, but talking about this on the upfront with them will oftentimes feels like scary, because we're like, if we start questioning them, maybe they think that we're doubting. But in fact, when you ask these kinds of questions, it commands respect. I know for me, when potential clients come to me and they ask me questions, it means that they're taking it seriously. And that's what I want. Like, I expect that. But if you've come from, usually like in childhood, if you were taught not to question things, authority, then this might come a little difficult for you. Have you ever been in a job where you just couldn't ask for a raise? Like you just couldn't bring yourself to do it because you didn't feel worthy? Asking questions is demonstrating how much you respect yourself, which is, I would think, for any boss is desirable, but also that you respect the position that you're in and respect the value that you are bringing to the table. Okay. What's the benefit for you? And you could ask this, you could say this to yourself, like, what benefit will I be receiving by doing this? Like, why is it good for me to do this commitment? But also ask them if it's an outward thing. What is the benefit that they hope to be receiving by including me, or by my decision to include myself in? What will they be in their minds? What do they think that I will provide? What are the drawbacks or sacrifices that I would have to make by doing it, right? Really thinking through these things, because if you are like me and like any of the things that I was talking about earlier, if you're this far into the episode, then I assume that this does resonate with you. And that oftentimes I still do this. I'm ADHD. I don't think about the time it takes, or I grossly underestimate how much time all the tasks take. This is one thing I'm working on. I have to write it down, and sometimes that still confuses me. I don't know. It's like a learning disability for sure. But whatever it is that you need to do to look at, what sacrifices will I be making? Where am I giving time that I would otherwise be allocating to something else? Energy, all the things, right? And then the last question is, what if things don't go as planned? What would you make that mean? What would they make that mean? What if the job doesn't get done by the deadline? Are you agreeing to stay on? Ask them if it doesn't get done by the deadline, if there is a deadline, what happens then? What if somebody throws a wrench into the works? Would the expectation be for me to stay on until the job is done? Or would it be like more of a contract thing where the deadline date is the date that you agreed to, and after that, they're on their own? And ask this question to yourself too. What if I don't get it done by that date? Not to deter you from going after the goal, but know that up front so that it doesn't take you by surprise and then you want to quit. Okay? Which we're going to go to in a minute. Consider the no. Y'all, I've talked with you guys about this before, like when talking about relationships, even if you're in like happy, like blissfully in love with somebody, or with even friendships that you have, like so happy with that. I think it's always important with goals, commitments, whatever you're saying yes to, what it would be like to say no. How would that feel for you to not do it? And is it worth it to you? If you're in a marriage, this is a commitment. This is something that you say yes to every single day. You may not think that you do because you feel like a lot of times that you just have to, or we're already here. What's the point? Depending on how the relationship is right now with y'all, how you're thinking about them. But really, truly, every day that you stay in that marriage, you're actually saying you're choosing yes. You're choosing to stay in it. So that choice, it can feel really empowering. And considering the no can feel really, really empowering, and also can help you to renew a relationship if that's what you want to do, but also renew your commitment. Okay? So consider the no. Don't just only go to the yes, which is what I was talking about earlier with like the habit yes. Yeah. Okay. Allow for evolution, for evolvement. Meaning, if you're not sure, I do this a lot, and I'll explain it in a minute, but if you're not sure, maybe you've never done this kind of thing before that you're being propositioned to do. That sounded weird, but you know what I'm saying? Do a trial. Do it for just a short period of time, like an interim, and ask to do a review. Like, let's revisit this in 30, 60, or 90 days. Let's start this. Let's see if we both like it. We'll move from there. I do this a lot. I also coach kids, alienated kids, or kids acting out in some way. And so because I usually talk to the mom or dad first, obviously the kids don't come to me wanting coaching, right? One of the parents does. And so I always tell them, let's start with a shorter period of time and see how it works. And then we'll revisit this after a month or after 3 months. We'll see. We do a little review, see how things are going, how the kiddo is responding. I visit with the kid about this very thing. And then we move from there. That way, they're not setting their kid up for something that they don't like. They're not committing to something financially that isn't going to be used or is going to be wasted, right? And then also, for me, it's a partnership. It's much more of a partnership than it is some obligation on both sides. Apply that to your own life. I am so thirsty today. All right. Like I said earlier, just know and like all of your reasons for doing everything that you do all the time. Really, the definition in my mind of living unconsciously, walking through life, bouncing, ricocheting off of things like I used to do, is the opposite of this. It's just saying yes because it's what you think you should do in the moment, flying by the seat of your pants, just living in a really reactive state all the time. And instead, start saying yes because you mean it, because it's something that you really want to do. Start living fully, authentically you. If you truly don't want to say yes and you want to say no, then feel empowered with that no. That way, the only person, and this is a good thing, the only person that you can blame in your life for all the things that you commit to from now on, and I mean little commitments like what you do with your day and your maybe even lunchtime period, when you're saying yes and no because that's what you want to do, then you only have you to look to hold responsible, which is so empowering. Because then nobody else is responsible for keeping you happy or keeping you whatever it is that you're looking for. You made the decisions because that's what you wanted to do. You're not people pleasing. You're not doing it silently, like on the fly, not even realizing it, expecting them to return something. All right. So lastly, I want to talk about really having the courage to say yes to you. Saying yes because you mean it. And because you value yourself and your life moving forward, you're invested in the today you and also in the future you, knowing that When you get up to the future, you'll look back and thank past version of you, today you, for believing in that version of you so much, so hard. Listen, you guys, it's so important because so many things, and this is where I come in hot because I noticed this going on with me this week and last week, really. I have a business opportunity, something kind of separate than this. I mean, I'll always be doing this, what I do, but an additional something else going on that I could be doing too. And I found myself like I was super excited about it in the beginning, and then doubt started to creep in. And I started to look for all the reasons why it wouldn't work. And then I had this sense of urgency about like, I need to do it like right now, because if not, then it's going to go away. Like the opportunity is going to go away. I noticed all of this self-created suffering on top, right? And then today, I started to see what I was doing. And I was like, wait a second. By me doubting and wanting to rush into it and do it now out of scarcity would have caused me to not show up in the way that I want to show up, produce in the way that I want to produce. The doubt started to eke in, and then the floodgates opened and it was pouring in. And I found myself, I was like going back and forth from it needs to happen now or it's never going to happen. Those were the only two options. It was black or white. Like it needs to happen right now, or it never will happen at all. And maybe it just never will. And so then I started to kind of give up on the opportunity. Even though it's right there for me, I could snatch it and not be so rushy about it and have faith in my ability and my commitment, me renewing my commitment throughout it to get the job done in the way that I would do it and want to do it, right? I was cutting faith off and believing more in doubt. And as you can imagine, that's not going to turn out well for me in the end if I continued to lean into that doubt. If I didn't have both feet in and committing to the thing that I want to do. So then it kind of reminded me of there's this Chinese, I guess, analogy about bamboo and planting a seed, but I started to think about it even more. You guys know how much I love plants. I've got these seeds in my kitchen drawer. I'm sure this comparison has been done a million times over, analogy with seeds being the same as ideas. But I have this thing of seeds. They're in like this little bowl. I started to think about how long they've been sitting there. And they're all different kinds of seeds, actually, too. There's some wildflowers, and then I have some lavender, and then I have a couple trees and what have you. Some of them are mixed up. I'm not sure which is which. But each one of those seeds, consider those or think about those as different ideas and goals that you've had. And most of the time, especially coming from trauma, we get into the people pleasing and doubting ourselves. And the further in the dark and in the drawer, those seeds get pushed. We start putting all of our wants and desires on the back burner until you don't even remember which seed is what. Things get like all mucky and blurry about what it is that you wanted ever to begin with anyway. The longer that those seeds sit not being tended to, the likelihood of them germinating and turning into the trees or the flowers or whatever they are becomes less and less. You have to say yes to those seeds, those ideas, if they're worth it to you. In this analogy, the yes would be water, care. It would mean putting each one of those seeds out in the ground somewhere, digging a little hole and placing them gently, covering them back up and pouring water and waiting. If it's watered regularly, if it's got the proper sunlight, eventually it'll come up. But because we can't see what's going on underground, we'll go out and we'll look and nothing's there. Maybe we'll come back a couple days more, nothing's there. We let a week go by and we come back and maybe it's dry because you forgot to water it one day and there's a bunch of weeds growing in its place. And you start to lose hope. And you're like, what's going on here? Why won't my seed work? Was it a bad seed? You start to doubt it. And then you're like, well, maybe I should just check. And so you dig away all the weeds and you start to dig down and there's some roots. And you realize that a whole root system has grown underneath the ground. You just can't see it because the soil's over it. And by doing that, you interrupt the growth. Nevertheless, you cover the seed back up with soil and then finally up it pops through and we see the little green stem. But then we've got aphids or spider mites that come and they like to eat all the new leaves. And so if we, the caretakers of the plants or trees, right, don't tend to the pests, things go to shit in a hurry for that plant. It's at its most vulnerable, being, brand new. Same thing with ideas. I know that I'm going all into this analogy, but I think it's so, and I know there's probably plenty of other analogies like that. You just leave it to me to do the plant one. For me, it's a great visual, especially when we're most vulnerable. Think about our situations of alienation. When we're most vulnerable, it feels like we're being pecked at, challenged, and kicked, assaulted, and all the things that the alienating parent does. Court doesn't work out right, and lawyers are expensive, and all the things happen to us. And we could lose faith and just say, forget it. Forget all of this. Forget me trying to excel at life. And that's what I did for a long time. That's what many alienated parents do. They're like, fuck it, nothing works, right? Many people give up, like give up. And I don't want that for you. I don't want that for me. I don't want that for anybody. It's so important to have faith and stick with your yeses. Don't go digging up that seed and ruin that root system that it's working so hard to build for you. It's building your foundation. You just don't see it yet. But it's happening. It's all happening. And if it's happening with you, like, especially when it comes to like self-growth, personal care, mental health is concerned, it's so common that you don't really see the rewards coming your way. If you've got these lofty goals, these big goals for yourself, but you have to get the foundation right, your core right before, just trust and know that even though that you can't see the huge changes in yourself and in the impact that you're making, keep going. Don't stop. Every time you doubt, it's like digging up that seed again and ruining that root system. Every time you halt, put the project on hold. Now, if you're doing it mindfully, it's one thing, but if you're doing it out of fear or lack of self-worth or direction, right? Intentionality, is that it? Intention. Each time you pull away, say no to that plant, say no to your idea, you compromise the foundation that's already been built. Everything that you've already been working so hard for. You have the choice right then and there to walk away and not water it and not tend to it. Or you have the choice to say yes to it, water it, and let it grow. You can. There will be times where you do doubt yourself. There will be times where you're not sure and you do need to reassess, revisit. Is this worth it for me? Is this what I want in the end? Why am I wanting to quit now? Is it out of fear? Then think again. You're not going to like your reason for quitting. Keep reassessing. Do it consciously so that you can continue to say yes to yourself and yes to your life. And when you're able to say yes and keep that yes to yourself, you earn the trust back with yourself. And that ends up showing out in your life, in your relationships, and all the things and what you're able to produce moving forward. They say that most people quit just before the miracle happens or just before they see the fruits of their labor, right? So many people quit right before they're there because of the same thing that I'm talking about here. All the roots are growing, but they just don't see it. They don't see the rewards coming yet. They're like, I'm trying so hard for this goal. I'm trying. And they lose faith and they give up and they walk away from this foundation that had been built, this hard-earned, well-laid foundation. They walk away from it just before it starts to happen. You can apply the 80-20 rule here. So 80% of the progress happens in the last 20% of the time before you reach your goal. So all of the fruits of your labor are going to show up at the very end. All the stuff before, if you're only going to see little rewards on your way up to the goal, it's going to be very small, limited. It's going to feel like it's not working. And then at that last 20%, that's when you have to hold on because that's when 80% of your rewards show up. So don't give up early on yourself or on your goals or whatever it is that you've committed to, okay? Love yourself enough, respect yourself enough, and respect those in your life enough to invest in you. That's what I have for you guys today. I hope it helps. Start saying yes with some power. Thought out, well thought out. That's the way to go to commitment, you guys, is really asking yourself all those questions and redeciding every day, recommitting every day. Okay. All right, guys. Facebook Live at 12:15 Eastern Standard Time in the private Facebook group on Friday. And that's all. See you next week. Okay, that's it. Now I got to fucking edit that.
Thanks so much for listening today. If you like what you're hearing and you'd like to hear more, please make sure to click subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. Also, for bite-sized clips and tips, be sure to find me on TikTok or Instagram. See you next week.